There's so much hype on that Penn State game. It sort of reminds me of my year, whenever my first year starting, we played in the Kickoff Classic. And, if we would open with, it was the year after the 93 season, we'd open with Ball State and won, we'd give us a lot of confidence. We play Nebraska, who ends up being the eventual national champion, and just, railroads everybody. If we don't play them the first game and get beat 31-0, and then we question everything we do at every position, for several weeks, I think that season is a whole lot different than that. And I think that loss probably hurt us as much as anything. I think one of the biggest problems was, you look at the clock, and, I remember looking at my kids being like, why are we jamming the guy outside with 30 seconds left in the game? Like, even if they complete a couple passes and kick a field goal, we're gonna be down one. We fought so hard to get back to a 1-score game, and we we left that guy isolated by himself out there and throw the ball down the field. So, you know, that's why I think all the decisions that are going to be made are about people who have been there for a long, long time, and and of course that's my chance to be critical, I guess. But that projects that game goes from a 1-score game and then a 2-hour rain delay to then a 2-score game. Your head's hanging down, and you got to sit and think about it for 2 additional hours. I mean, I think that's just that affects the game, and maybe things would have ended up the same way. Who knows? But I think that loss probably carried with them quite a while, just because I've been there. I've seen that hype game, that opponent, you think you're going to make your mark, and then something happens, you basically get your teeth kicked in, and like it can affect you for a while.
I appreciate that perspective because I've been kind of critical. I love almost everything Wren Baker's done since he's been
Yeah.
West Virginia.
Yes.
One of the things I've disagreed with was them going away from playing those Power Four opponents every year
Yeah.
in the non-con. My philosophy or my thinking was, the Big 12 is already perceived as a weaker conference.
Yeah.
So they need to play tougher opponents in order to try to overcome that. But the argument by Neil Brown and Wren Baker was always, but we need to play games that are, a little less taxing, easier to win, whatever. And now to hear from former player's perspective, I think so that there is something to that mentally, from a mental perspective, that to overcome when you drop a game like that to open the season, especially when it's hyped up so much.
Yeah.
It can affect you down the road.
Yes, and I don't think it's wrong to play those games. I think they're great for fans and all those things. But the thing is, in college football, there are no scrimmages. You don't scrimmage.
Should be, by the way.
You don't get any. Every game counts. It's not quite as bad now because you have more teams slotted for the playoffs, and it's much easier to get to a bowl game than it was 30 years ago. But those type of games in the openers. You don't really know what you have. You got an idea, you think, and then and it's like the Mike Tyson saying, everyone has a game plan until they get punched in the face. Wow. And so, and you get, and depending on who's throwing that punch, you can be like, wow, that's just it can affect you for quite a while, and it definitely did us in '94. I can see maybe it did last year for a while, and certainly affected the fan base right away because going through after the season before and the big winning a bowl game, and we were expecting a lot of big things, especially with the senior quarterback. So those are always, it's great to have those expectations. But the fact is, with no scrimmage games, you don't necessarily know what you got, and Penn State was pretty daggone good. They made it in. So
yeah, they were. They had some. I mean, they made it to the third quarterfinals of the playoffs, I think it was. So
yes, and you look at the NFL. I mean, they have tons of guys from Penn State, and several guys picked in the. They had a couple in the first round, so they were loaded.
Yeah, I do want to point out though, one bright spot: Abdul Carter could not get past Wyatt Milam in that game.
Yeah, very true, very true. I mean,
notice that.
Milam was a man. He did a great job.
He did, man. And Abdul Carter was a first round draft. He was one of the first players taken on the board, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of places had him rated as the number 1 player, actually. You know, it
So
was,
yeah, it was cool to see how White handled him in that game.
yeah.
You know, I've criticized Coach Brown and his staff a lot, but the one thing they had a lot of things working against them. I mean, they had that schedule every year where they had to play two Power Fours every year, several of those on the road. They had the NIL and the portal stuff all happened kind of right in the middle of his, or really early on in his reign tenure. He had an AD change.
Mm-hmm.
He did have a lot of things
Yep.
working against him.
Yep. He had COVID as well. I mean, that's, yeah.
Yeah, COVID. And that's not the whole controversy around his D coordinator.
Yep.
After his first year, that whole thing was a mess. I'm sure that wasn't easy but at the end of the day, the buck always stops with the head coach. So,
Yep.
and the bottom line was they just didn't win enough games, and hopefully,
I thought he was a wonderful guy, and
yep, he was or
had
he
success
is. So
everywhere
yeah,
he's gone. Um, I lived in Blacksburg for 13 years, and Beamer was there, and Fuente came in and looked great the first year, and then after that, he had a quarterback. Well, then his quarterback left early, and then just never could recapture the success they had. I'm there now. I work there now, and Coach Prize there, and I kind of know on the periphery. I don't follow. It's funny. I live and work in a place for all those years. I don't know all the details about them because I'm a West Virginia guy. So
right.
and they're in the ACC. So I don't really follow it quite as close, but
Mhm.
it's there's a lot in fit and that sort of thing, and success other places doesn't always translate into,
Yeah,
especially for newer head coaches, and newer to Power Four football, and
yeah,
so I mean I think that's also one of the reasons why Rich became such a strong candidate is he won at WVU before, he won at Michigan, and he won at Arizona. And he took a program from low levels of D1, lower level of D1 to a higher level of D1, and with the portal and he did everything magically. So like I think his success because he has much longer proven track record at the Power Four level now.
and when you look at Rich Rod's track record, I mean, he wins. He typically wins at places that have not necessarily had the level of success. I mean, Arizona, for example. I've heard
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people say, "Well, he didn't do that well good at Arizona." Did you look at Arizona's record before he got there?
True.
Arizona was not some college football juggernaut by any stretch, and he took them to a Pac-12 title game and a 10-win season. I think they only have 3 or 4 10-win seasons in their history, and he had one of those.
He had one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's Arizona wasn't an easy place to win, and like you said, Jacksonville State from FCS to FBS, and he won the conference in his or took him to a bowl game or some whatever it was in his very first year
Right.
at the FBS level, and most of the players on that team were recruited to play FCS ball.
Correct. Yeah. That's
So I
very.
just think it goes to show you his ability to not only spot talent that other coaches might miss, but just to get. I think he has that, like you touched on earlier. He has the ability to get the absolute best out of you. He will push you and force you to give it your best, and your best is probably better than what other coaches might have seen. You know what I'm
Correct.
saying?
Yep. I agree
Push
with you.
it out of you.
And then you think about his time when he was with us. I mean, we just some of the big wins we had. Wins that we have not. You know, beating Tech on the road 2 or 3 different times. When they were at the peak of
Right.
their run, and beating Georgia, and I know he wasn't there for the Fiesta Bowl, but that was his team and his
Right.
scheme and players, and beating Oklahoma. So you know that's just, and to do it on a very consistent basis to the point that as fans we expected it. We had no fear anywhere we went, and to do that, go down to Miami, early on. I think that was back. Some people talk about one of those teams as being one of the greatest teams ever at Miami because I
Yep.
think Kellen Winslow was on that team, and we went blow to blow with them. And of course, Quincy had that incredible catch and run on the screen
Yeah.
pass, and I think Pac-Man Jones lit Kellen Winslow up in that game. So there's a lot of and I think they ended up coming back in the end and beating us. But like to go down and compete and do some of the things that on a consistent basis is what our program misses. And
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
and that's
Uh,
what that happens over the next 2 or 3 seasons.
if you don't mind, I got a couple more questions for you, and I'll let you out of here.
Yes,
First one, Zach Alley, the defensive coordinator. What did you think about that hire?
I thought it was a pretty interesting hire, and not that I know all the defensive coordinators, but I just think it was pretty cool that he left Oklahoma, a place where they've had it's one of the blue bloods in college football to come be our coordinator. Of course, I think he and Rich have a coaching past together, if I'm not mistaken.
They
So,
did.
and I'm sure this guy has a chance to make a mark on his own outside of the University of Oklahoma. So
Yeah,
that's good, and he's a young guy. You got to have a mix of that on your staff. You got to have a mix of
yeah,
some guys, some younger guys. So I think that's good.
yep,
Uh, and let's just be honest. Here we are in the days of transfer portal. Here's a guy that's at one of the top programs in the country. Even though nobody has followed him yet, it's not over yet.
right,
He's got ties to some of those guys for the next 2 or 3 years. So,
exactly.
we have an opportunity to get some of those guys.
Yep, yep. Yeah, I like the why you mentioned the mix. I was actually going to mention that earlier, but uh, you've got guys like Castile, you've got guys like the McNeil, the offensive line coach, guys who have been around a really long time. You blend it in with guys like his son Red, like Pat White, like Noel Devine, these younger coaches, and even some of the defensive coaches. These younger coaches, I love that mix because, like you mentioned, you need somebody who can explain to these guys, these players. Okay, here's what he said. I know he yelled it, but this is what you need to do. Kind of, uh, I guess, offset or counter the way he coaches. Right, guys with a little different coaching style and maybe can relate to the players a little more.
Yeah,
I love that mix. So you've got the knowledge mixed with. I can just envision Zach Alley, the 30-year-old defensive, hot up and coming defensive coordinator, sitting in a room with a guy like Jeff Castile, who probably knows more than what Zach Alley has forgotten, or has forgotten more than Zach Alley knows, rather. And
right,
no offense to Zach Alley, it's just an age. I mean, he's just been doing it so long.
right.
And man, the knowledge that can come out of that conversation and out of that meeting room, I think it's awesome, an awesome blend.
I think so too. And and you take, honestly, I mean, there's a lot of new things, but like you know, football really, on the principle standpoint, doesn't change that much. If you actually look at what routes they run and things they do and blitzes they do. Someone's done it before. If you run a slant, you run a flat in front of it. If you run a curl, you run a flat in front. I mean, those you run four verts. Those are
Right.
cover two. You bend it in the middle. I mean, those type of things have not changed ever. It's just how you do it, how you teach it, how you combo it with other things. So, that's where a guy like Castile, who has seen and done everything for many, many years, can say, well, we used to have a blitz like this that we could have
Yep.
taken, or coverage like this, or,
Yep.
I think that's the mix of old and new is
Yeah, I love.
valuable. And then
It.
the younger guys can relate to the players on a personal basis.
Yep. Yeah, agree. So when they need to have a conversation with you about something outside of football, they're going to they might be more likely to go to them than they would the older coaches, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah, very true.
Um, one more. This is kind of. I'm going to ask you to reminisce a little bit, and I may have asked you this question last time you were on, but what is your one of or some of your fondest memories of your days at West Virginia?
I mean, I think, gosh, being a part of an undefeated team. I was a freshman. I got to play a little bit some of that season as a
Mm.
backup. I mean, and then obviously my first start and that season, how we were. I mean, we won four and
Yeah.
dead, and we came back and became one of the hottest teams in the country, and defeated a couple of ranked teams at the end of the season. I'll never forget whenever, and I may have told you this story last time I was there, but we. I think we ran about 30 check with me's at the line of scrimmage against Boston College. This was my sophomore year, so I was calling a lot of the game at the line, and Coach Neal said afterwards I got every check right. It didn't, with the play might have been executed perfectly, but I got all the checks right, and we had such a game plan. And we were on. It was funny. We were doing television interview. He was doing the interview, and then I was next up behind him, and Coach Nealon just slaps me on the chest as he's walking off, and you could hear the microphone still on him. He says, "We got their ass, didn't we, Chad?" So like one of the great things, or the Pitt game in '94. Me and Abraham and Vanderpool are doing interviews because it's people just wanting to talk to us for so long after that game, the way it ended, and we walk out to get on the bus to ride back to Morgantown, and Coach Nealon left us. So, I rode back with my mom and my stepdad because
Oh,
they
really?
had to go through Morgantown. So they left me and Zach and
That's
Van.
hilarious.
Yeah. So
I bet it wasn't hilarious at the time,
no,
but
it was not funny at the time, but actually it was a lot nicer than riding on the bus all the way
I was
back.
going to say it probably wasn't too bad once you got in that nice, comfortable car versus
Yeah.
the bus. But
And then, just a lot of the friendships and, guys I've gotten back in touch with over the years and like I see Zach now. I started going back to games a couple years ago after my kids all graduated and were out of school. So I have season tickets, and so I see a lot of guys up there, or, now I see like Alonzo Washington. Every time I go to Morgantown, Alonzo's there. He's an attorney there in Morgantown. So I see him, and the six of us that go to Jersey every summer. I mean, that's just a great group of guys, and we talk all day and give each other a hard time and make
yep,
fun of each other and send inappropriate messages, just like we were,
just like
eight.
you were in college.
Yes, exactly right. So
Hey,
we have a good time, and so and every time I'm back in Morgantown, I say it to my son every time. I say, "Why'd I ever leave this place? I should have just never left." So it's a
yeah,
great. I love it. It's special.
yeah,
Um, it always will be for me.
yeah, awesome. Well, Chad, man, it's been an honor to have you on the show again. Really appreciate you taking time. I'm sure the fans appreciate it. Uh, Majority of our fans enjoyed watching you play, and as did I. So
Well, I
appreciate
appreciate.
you representing Southern West Virginia. Even though you live in Virginia now, you're still a Southern West Virginia boy at heart, right?
Yeah. Hey, I'll always be a West Virginian. So I've taught all these guys how to sing country roads, and
That's
uh,
right.
the first time that WVU came back to Tech, or we played Tech, we came back and we beat them, held on, stopped them inside the 10-yard line like what 6 times we stopped them.
Yep.
I had a little watch party in my house in Blacksburg, and I printed out the words to Country Roads. And so as soon as the game was over, I blasted Country Roads in my house and made them all sing Country Roads after the game. So
I remember that game. Is that the
yeah,
Brian King game? Brian
that
King reception game?
this was just a few years ago when Daggy threw the
Oh, the recent one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Yes.
yeah. So
I do remember
uh,
that. I was on my couch. I was supposed to go to that game,
yeah,
and I got. I think it was one of my kids got COVID because it was like the year after the COVID pandemic.
yes,
One of my kids got COVID, and I didn't. I'd been exposed, so I didn't want to risk it, so I didn't go. And I ended up having to watch it from the couch. But man, they said the atmosphere at that game was phenomenal.
oh yeah. Everyone that I knew, I had patients that would go to the game,
Mhm.
and they used to talk about not wanting to go to Morgantown to a game, but they said when they went back, it was such a different atmosphere. They said it was very electric atmosphere, it was very intense, but they were all like everyone was so nice. It was like that break was needed. I lived there. I was doing my residency when we played them the last time, and that's when Marcus Vick and
Yep.
flipped
Right.
off the and I always say, not that I want to take up for Marcus Vick too much, but there were some fans yelling at him. I'm sure they weren't telling him how great a player he was when he
Oh yeah.
scored.
I'm sure. I'm sure they weren't. I'm sure they weren't.
So,
But anyway, Chad, again, everybody remember River Ridge Dermatology in Blacksburg, Narrows, and uh,
Roanoke.
Roanoke. I don't
Yeah,
know why I
thanks for
forget
bringing
that.
it up.
I don't know why
Appreciate
I keep forgetting Roanoke. But anyway, that's the biggest city of all three
it.
of those.
That's how big.
Anyway,
Anyway,
yeah.
thank you.
Anyway, Roanoke, Blacksburg, and Narrows, Virginia, River Ridge Dermatology. They do accept patients from West Virginia as well. As a matter of fact, I have some friends who go there, so they do a good job. If you're in need for a dermatologist, uh, Chad, thanks again, man. It's been a lot of fun chatting
All
it
right,
up.
appreciate it. Thank you again.
Have a good one.
You too. Go Mountaineers.
Go Mountaineers, Q Country Roads.